you're going to hate being a manager because no one's going to do it as good as you and no one is going to meet your expectations. He's like, you've got these super high expectations. He's like, so just be prepared that everyone is going to let you down, which is like a cynical view of leadership, but it's so true. Every single person's expectations of themselves is different. And so if you expect everyone on your team to meet what your expectations, and I'm doing bunny ears because there's no one right way. But if you're really expecting everyone's going to do things exactly the way I would do them.
All right, welcome back everyone to episode 8 of the Fisher Search Group Leadership Podcast. Today's episode is called How to Stay True to Your Values in Leadership and Life. And I'm your host, Brett Fisher, and I'm joined today by my friend and colleague, Jordan Grace, or JG as she's known for. JG, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let me read a quick bio to our guests. So Jordan Grace Miller is a senior marketing leader who's built her career at the intersection of strategy, storytelling, and social impact. She's led brand and marketing efforts at companies like Dyson, Post Foods. Yes, she once ran marketing for Fruity and Cocoa Pebbles, and most recently serving as VP of Marketing at Inspire Medical Systems. Jordan blends deep CPG and MedTech experience with a passion for building inclusive teams and mentoring the next generation of leaders. She holds an MBA from the University of Minnesota's Carlson School and serves as Vice Chair of People Serving People, a nonprofit organization that supports families experiencing homelessness. Outside of work, she's a certified level 3 wine nerd with a WSET diploma and a love for all things bold, whether it's brand strategy or a Barolo. All right, thanks for being here.
Thank you. That was great. A good Barolo joke. I love that.
Yeah. Awesome. Is it, you're listening, is it weird listening to a bio live, like someone reading your bio? How does that sit?
I love that.
Okay.
That's so fun.
Well, let's dive right in. I'm so excited to have you here. Typically, we have guests on our program in sales leadership or career coaching. You're the first person on the marketing side of the house, also the commercial side. But yeah, you're the first one. So why don't you just take us through your career, how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So my career has been, like you said, equal parts kind of CPG, traditional consumer products, and equal parts kind of the MedTech space, as we're calling it now. Used to be med device, now it's MedTech, which is really fun. And my career started, I went to undergraduate for both marketing and supply chain and graduated at a time that jobs in marketing weren't easy to come by, and I didn't have a couch to sleep on. So I had to get a job and get the heck out of there. And so I took the first job that I could get, which was in trucking. So I actually worked at a trucking company, a third-party logistics company, I think most folks are familiar with. And I sat there and made 100 phone calls a day, talked to truck drivers all day long, learned a ton. Mostly learned that I did not like that. One, I didn't like cold calls, and two, I didn't have a passion for trucking. And so I then started thinking about what was my dream job and started kind of pounding down doors is probably the best way to say, and worked my way into Dyson, which most people are familiar with as the vacuum cleaner company, but also hair care. I actually dried my hair with the Dyson today. Okay. And the story of getting started there is actually really fun. I sort of convinced a leader that he should take a chance on me. He did. The long story, short story after that. Then transitioned into Fruity and Cocoa Pebbles, where after a few years in that cereal business, I really thought to myself, what's going to be important to me long term? I'm sort of right at this really special time in my career. And that's when I made the jump to MedTech because I loved the marketing, I loved leading businesses, but I wanted to make a difference and I wanted to be in a space where I felt like I was really doing something every day. And so that's how I got into MedTech. And so I was at Watchman at Boston Scientific and now have served as a vice president of Inspire for the last 5 years.
Amazing. So a couple of call outs that I want to just share with our listeners. Background in sales. We see a lot of people come up through classical marketing, downstream marketing, sometimes upstream, but not having the sales component. And since you work so closely with sales, I think it's really good for marketing leaders who have that sales experience at the very beginning to understand really how to bring those two parties together and speak their language. So that's a great call out. And then I think the jump to MedTech, well, actually, I'll back up. The convincing the person at Dyson to bring you on, A+ right there. Everyone should be persistent in their job search, just like that. Because I think in this, especially in 2025, article came out recently, I think it was Business Insider, how the best way you're going to get your next job is through networking. ditch the applicant tracking system. It's going to be networking. So, and then finally the jump to MedTech. So that leads me to my first question, which is, what drew you to the healthcare side and how did you align it with your values?
Yeah. Well, I loved marketing, and marketing is really influencing, storytelling, and building a space for your brand, your product in your customers' lives. And I was great at it, which was awesome. It was a born talent, but it just felt like, gosh, I wish I could be influencing and storytelling in a place where it made a really big difference. And healthcare is such a special place that if you can convince people to change their lifestyle or make different choices in their healthcare, you can change not only their lives, their families' lives, but population health. And so that was a thing I was really interested in. And then I've also got a really deep family history with cardiac disease. And so it sort of came together that there was a cardiology specific brand that was in the health tech space looking for somebody with CPG experience. And it just felt like such a good fit because I needed the challenge of something maybe a little more intellectual to challenge me besides the Fruity and the Cocoa Pebbles. And I also really wanted to be in a space where I knew I was making a difference and something that I was personally passionate about. And so the cardiology space in medical device was just that kind of special place where I cared about it. It was hard, it's interesting, and also I was making a difference every day, and I knew that. And so it was a really special way for me to kind of use that storytelling in medical.
Great. I love that you were able to use the CPG as the bridge into MedTech. So not often people think about that, but we're always looking at the bullseye. Obviously, someone in healthcare, in medical device, MedTech, but then the next rung out will definitely be CPG because it's a tangible product. So any lessons learned and how they shaped from your career so far, any lessons learned and how they shaped your leadership style as you stepped into leadership?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'll talk about two specific experiences that I always think back to and have really shaped who I am. The first is when I first became a manager, my leader at the time, who's still a dear mentor of mine, and I still reach out to him quite frequently, he said to me, "You're going to hate leading people. You're going to hate being a manager because no one's going to do it as good as you and no one is going to meet your expectations." He's like, you've got these super high expectations. He's like, so just be prepared that everyone is going to let you down, which is like a cynical view of leadership, but it's so true. Every single person's expectations of themselves is different. And so if you expect everyone on your team to meet what your expectations, and I'm doing bunny ears because there's no one right way. But if you're really expecting everyone's going to do things exactly the way I would do them, and I'll be super pleased with that, cat's out of the bag, leadership is going to be miserable for you and you will hate managing people. But if you're comfortable saying, I love to be challenged and see different and interesting ways that other people on my team could approach a problem I think I know the answer to, and I can't wait to meet in the middle, then leadership is a lot of fun. And so that I think of that all the time, and I share that story every time I have a new leader on my team. And I just say, you're going to hate a lot of this, but as long as you know the reason you hate it is because you're coaching yourself out of looking at everything from only your point of view, it's really special. And so I think about that all the time. Every time I get something and I think, I wouldn't have done it that way, I think, that's right. That is the whole point. So that's the first one that really shaped me.
Right.
Yep.
And then now you're trying to pass it along to someone who you're hoping is going to do it just like you, but then, of course, they bring their own unique spin to it, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes even the process of teaching someone else how you would have done it is, if you've got the humility, can be informative because it sort of challenges you to say out loud why you think something. And if you've got enough humility, 5 times out of 10, half the time you're going to be like, I don't know if that's actually, now that I've said it out loud, I don't know that that's actually the right approach. So you just have to constantly remind yourself as a leader.
Right. But that takes reflection. That takes being reflective.
Yeah.
So you said there was 2 points. Was there 2 points?
Yes. There was another one, probably 5 years after that into my career. A really incredible woman I work with said to me, you can be fast with work, but not with people. And as a very type A driven person who has a lot of bandwidth, it was a good reminder that the value in speed is only on work product. It's not on relationships. And learning when you need to take your time on something is about the relationships and slowing yourself down. Like, am I moving fast because there's a deliverable that needs to get done, or I'm moving fast because that's just how I move and I'm not intentionally taking time to build relationships here? And that really, I think about it all the time. It was just such a powerful statement. You can move fast with work, but not with people. Just really stuck with me. And I do remember that sometimes when I'll catch myself in a meeting or a conversation being like, okay, well, we got that, now what? When I just lost the opportunity to hear why they thought something, so that the next time I was working with them, I had more insight. And so it just taught me to slow down a little bit and really remember relationships.
Slow down and listen.
Yes.
Yeah. So I love those two. They're kind of slightly related, but they're all, but obviously they're different at the same time. So that's great in terms of opening up with your career. And for those of you just joining us, this is the Fisher Search Group podcast. Our episode today is how to stay true to your values in leadership and life with my guest, Jordan Grace. And if you like what you hear, please like, subscribe, comment below. Let's jump into our next segment called Leading with Purpose, not just a title. So my first question is, what does it mean to build a career that's about impact and not ego?
Well, it's just all about, it kind of goes back to why I got into med device in the first place. It's why do you come to work every day, right? If you're coming to work every day because you're really seeking title, salary, whatever that is, then it's going to be really hard to do that. But if you show up to work every day and say, like, what is my job to be done today? And you're excited about that thing, the title will come, all of the other things will come because you're doing the right work at the right time. Inspire has a really cool quote that they talk about a lot that is, I think, really meaningful here, where they say, you know, Dr. Glenn Nelson, who was one of the founding leaders of the organization alongside our CEO, said, you know, if you'll put the patient first, you'll never lose your way. Same thing here, right? If you're doing the right thing for the right reason and you care about the work, you'll get all the accolades, you'll get the role, you'll get the career. So to build a career that really is meaningful, it's about doing meaningful things and doing them for the right reasons. All the other stuff comes, but if you can't think outside that, then does become more about ego. And people can see through that. People can feel when it's really about.
What I'm picking up on is service and serving. And then coming back to your why and your passion and what got you here in the first place, reminding yourself of that. But around serving both your external customer, but then internally your internal customer, your team, and the people that you work with. So I love that.
My love language is acts of service. So I think that's coming through probably right now. I am very acts of service.
That's great. All right. How do you create team cultures where people thrive? Not just perform, but they're really thriving and they stay.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. We could talk about this for probably 2 hours. I think that the number one thing for me is that everyone has to feel like there's a space the size of them, right? They need to feel like there's a special place in this organization that is a me-sized need, and that need that I feel is celebrated. And so it's about just making every person feel uniquely valuable and appreciated. So you kind of have to do two things. One, you have to model vulnerability so that people can show you who their true selves are so that you can make that space for them. And then you've really got to celebrate progress versus just outcomes. You can't wait until the end of the year to give everybody, you have to really celebrate when people are being uniquely themselves and creating value together and doing that in really intentional and authentic ways. You can't do the, hey, that was a great presentation. It's got to be the, hey, you are the best on the team at this thing. And when you did that presentation, because you had that skill, you made that extra special. And what that does is says, I see you for who you really are. I see that the organization needs that in it, and nice job. And that is how you build team culture, because then everyone looks around and says, gosh, we're all needed here. This is a puzzle in all our shapes and sizes versus competing against each other or trying to create kind of a tension. It's more like, I need every one of you. We're a joint unit and they all get why they're special together. I think that is the core of it, is that everybody sees the value of each person on the team, and to make it fun, of course.
Yeah. So what you just sort of started to unpack was the differences on the team, like you were highlighting that person's skill set. And I want to go more into that, which actually leads us to our next section, which is on diversity in leadership. So I'm not going to comment too much because we're going to go into that. What does inclusion actually look like inside your leadership team?
Yeah, again, you're right. We did just start that. It's really about just making sure everybody feels appreciated for who they are. I think inclusion is misunderstood. I think a lot of people think it's a room full of people who all look and act and have differences, but inclusion is really, I'm actually including thoughts and feelings and feedback from different places. So it's where disagreement is safe and valued. It's where people have ownership, but they don't have, there's not discrete ownership, right? They know they can come in, they can own something, there's respect, but there's also the opportunity for disagreement and difference of opinions. So I think a lot of people think about diversity and inclusion as I just want to make sure there's a room full of people who all have different perspectives. But if the room doesn't make space for people to bring those perspectives, you don't have diversity. You just have a colorful room of really incredible humans that aren't actually sharing that. So inclusion isn't an invitation to the party. It's welcome to the party. I'm so glad you're here. What can I get you to drink? It's just different. And so I think that's the part of inclusion that people get wrong. And so for a team, it's got to be making sure every person feels that.
Yeah, in our brainstorming session, we were talking about diversity beyond the physical traits and more so about the diverse thinking that comes to your team and how people could potentially challenge you and push back and say, you know, there's probably a couple instances where they pushed back and they're like, I think it should be done this way. And I think you were at first, you know, like, okay, but wait, there's something here. And I think you leaned into it.
Yeah. Well, I can give you a great example actually that happened not that long ago. We were doing an RFP for a new creative agency. We picked an awesome one. And we were doing one of the meetings, and one of the gals on my team, super talented leader, I said something. I said, well, here's what we think. And she said, I totally disagree with that. That's not true. I think we should do it different. I go, awesome. What would you do different? And then I asked everyone their opinion about it. And ultimately I was like, yeah, she's right. Let's go there. And afterward, the agency said that shocked them. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a client just like say to their boss in front of the agency that they totally disagree. And I said, how sad, like what dull conversation you might have. But it was interesting to me that they found that surprising, and they meant it, and they were happily surprised. But it was interesting to me that they were surprised by that, just because it feels like such a natural thing my team does. But it is because we have trust, and she knew I would appreciate it and actually ask more questions. And that just comes from building that trust and inclusion.
Right. And you hired these people to specifically do that. And the agency may not have known that you specifically were okay with that.
Maybe.
And this was an example in real time that was coming up. So that's, I think that's important to realize the diversity beyond the physical traits. So.
Yeah, that's where the inclusion of diversity comes in. Is it's the active form of including people in the work. That's inclusion.
So, which leads me to ask, how are you creating that psychological safety zone to get real representation? Because to be able to do that, you need to be in a safe environment. So are you setting up in the interview process? Are you setting that up on your weekly huddles? Or how are you just creating that safe space where it's okay?
All the above.
Okay.
I would say the first is just normalizing vulnerability. So I said that before, but I'll say it because it's really important. I am who I am openly. That is different. Not every leader leads that way. I know there's different styles of leadership. Mine is vulnerable. I am who I am. I'm very open and honest. When I make mistakes, I do it loudly and I do it publicly. And I show people that it's okay to be vulnerable. I can say, I'm not the expert on that, so I actually don't want to make an opinion here. I'd like to hear other people's thoughts. And then that allows other people to do it. I think you also have to just make intentional space for every voice. I have been very guilty in the past of just taking up space in a room. So I will oftentimes say to people, and I do this in the interview process, I take up a lot of space. So what does I need to be doing to make space for you? For some people, that means I have to look at them and call on them and show them I want to hear from them. And from other people, they'll say things like, if you could just let me go first. And so you have to just ask people, how do you create intentional space for them so that they feel comfortable? And then I think you just have to hold everyone accountable, right? And not the people accountable, but the system, right? Is the way that we're doing this meeting not working because I'm not hearing from everyone? So it's not, hey, John, I don't hear from you in the meeting. It's, hey, what about the meeting, John, is making you not feel comfortable speaking up? And making it really about the system and not about the person really helps. So those are some of the things just I always think about, is just making sure I'm vulnerable. I make sure I make space for people that works for them. And then always going back to, is the system working? Are we building a system? And not make it about the person.
And how often are you revisiting that system? Like, are you constantly A/B testing and iterating and constantly?
Yep. Yeah. Well, because think about it. If you add a new team member, you're starting over, right? You've got now a new person, either a quieter, a louder, different opinion, different experience. Every time you introduce a new person, the system does the system still work? Or if you change the way you're working, right? If you go from, we're growing 20% versus we're down by 5%, those are very different places. And so you have to constantly assess, which is why you have to do quarterly meetings with your leadership team and then quarterly skip levels, sometimes monthly, and just always ask, what's working for you, what's not. That's creating space, giving them space to share feedback, and just being really open to constantly challenging how things work.
Hold on, you said skip levels. What's that?
That's where I talk. So I have one-to-ones with all my direct reports, but then I also have one-to-ones regularly with their direct reports, because
Okay.
I always want to know, how are they doing? Is there anything you wish you could share? Is there feedback for me as a leader, right? Do you feel comfortable telling me that you think our one-to-one or our team meetings are too long or too short? And so once you ask someone the same question 6 different times every single month, they realize you're serious and they will start giving you real answers. If you only ask once, they think, oh, she's just asking because she thinks it's the right thing to do. But if I ask every single month, eventually they're like, oh no, she really will keep asking me until I give her an answer. You don't do it to be pestering, you do it to stay consistent. I want to know, I'll keep asking.
Yeah. So I love that. Thank you for sharing those. You've mentioned vulnerability twice so far in our discussion. So I want to take our next section.
Yes.
Is called personal growth and what's next. I'm so curious about your thoughts, your mindset in like this season of exploration.
Yeah.
2025.
Yeah. Well, and I think even just the whole workforce is changing, right? People are challenging remote or in person. People are, there's just so much change in the way people are thinking about their work. I'm hearing so many people trying to do their own business, or it's a really special time, I think, across the workforce on just what everyone is inspired by and the way we work. For me, I think it's interesting. I've been a leader for quite some time now, but still really early in my journey. I always come back to, like, I've created my ethos around leadership, and it's a little unique and a little sparkly, and not everyone loves it. And I constantly have to say to myself, what are the things about me that I will not change? Like, no amount of coaching will change, not because I'm not willing to change, but because I'm doing it on purpose and I want it and it's important to me. And what are things that I can grow in? And I think right now what I'm really thinking about is, like, what parts of my leadership style are always going to be who I am, because I really believe in them. And it's how I like to lead teams and how I know my teams like to be led. And what parts of it are things I can just always get better at until the day I die. And so I think one of those is vulnerability, right? I am a very vulnerable leader. I'm very open. I have my whole team to my house for Christmas or the holidays, because I want them to see me as a human, and I want them to feel like we're together in it. And that can be controversial. I've been told you shouldn't have your team to your house, and
fair.
Sometimes that's true. But the bigger my team gets, probably it was last time was pretty hard. It was like 100 people in this house. It was too many people.
Oh, wow. That's a lot.
It was loud and it was fun. Sort of, that's the biggest thing I'm really kind of grappling with as a leader right now. Is like, who am I as a leader? What will I never change? And if I'm in a space that doesn't fit it, would I leave it? Would I stay? So I think that's a big one. I think a lot of leaders go through that about this point in their career.
Do you think it's seasonal? Do you think it's cyclical? Do you think it's like an every 5-year thing?
Ooh, that's such a good. I think it's at inflection points, and I don't know that they're necessarily cyclical. I think it can be you get a new leader, or you start a new industry, or you hit a big milestone, and I think it causes you to, something here is different. Am I the same? Am I going to be different? How am I going to approach this? And I think hopefully as a leader, you have the vulnerability and the humility to do that at a regular clip. But also, I think, especially as a female leader, the confidence to actually write down the things that you won't change and say, here are the things about me and the way I lead that are about who I am. And you find a really good space for them. So I think it's inflection points. And careers, companies go through it too, as do people.
Yeah, I can relate. I've had my business now for 15 years, and I refer to this season that I'm in is like the 3.0. So I had the initial, first 5 years, and then in 2017 I went through a little bit of a transition, and then I had that next season, and I would say from 24 to 25 now, I'm now in this like 3.0 season where I added the podcast piece, which is now speaking with people that are seasoned and experienced. And then we also recently added an element to our business where we help people break into medical device sales. And of course, there's our core business in the middle, but to be able to have that sort of fuller life cycle view with candidates and leaders like yourself is like, it's just such a next level. It feels very enriching.
I love that. Well, and you got there, you built a business that feels that way because you said, here are some things I want to do. And you didn't sacrifice on them, right? Because there probably was a time where doing your own business felt really scary.
Yes.
You had to decide it's important enough for me to do this that I'm going to take on the risk. So you have to know what's important to you.
Yeah, and there's been several options along the way to jump off. and
Yes,
join this
I'm
team or
sure.
join that team. And I contemplated it, but
I'm
then in
sure.
the end, I was like, no, wait, I think there's still something here. And I have to say, I have a really great team
Yes.
alongside me. So I have 4 people. I'm sure they're going to be watching this. I could not do that. I couldn't do it without them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So just to add another element to this section on personal growth and what's next, how do you stay grounded in your values
Mm.
even when roles change?
Ooh, that's a great one. Well, you have to know who you are and what your values are. And I would say most people
Okay.
don't do that work, right? A lot of people haven't done the work to sit down and say, what's important to me? Who am I?
Yes.
And so I think everyone should do that. Everyone should take the moment to, especially if you're a marketer, you're a brand, you are your best
Mm-hmm.
product. Who
Mm-hmm.
are you? What are you about? What is your mission? It seems silly, but it's quite wonderful. So I think you have to know who you are to stay true to that. I find most of the people that struggle with really staying true to themselves when either a role changes or the organization changes or even their lives changes, people who just don't know who they are. So they're evolving constantly to meet the situation,
I
which
see.
everyone has to do to an extent. But you don't want to do it to the point where you lose your own sparkle.
Yeah.
You want to be valuable enough. If you're moldable, then you're not really that special because you could be anything. You don't want to be anything. You want to be something and something
Right.
specific.
Stand
I
for
think it's about
something.
exactly. And it's about knowing your values so that you can stay true to them. That's the most important part. I think that's the only thing. And then also just remembering that every day is a new day. Anything that happens can and will change for good or bad. And so just not getting too stuck in any individual situation, I think is really
Yeah. There's so many little bits here. We could go off and talk for another hour on it. I especially like, revisiting your values. I try to do that, once a year. Sometimes it's like November, December when I'm doing my strategic reflection.
mm,
Revisiting values, revisiting goals. I don't know if it's like a special time of year for you that you do that,
yeah.
but I would highly recommend that everyone
Yeah.
take the time, take a half day, just block off a half a day, go to a beach or wherever is
Yep.
a inspirational place for you and revisit these things because it's like maintenance.
Yes. Yes. Totally.
Okay, we're almost at the end of our episode, so I have a couple more questions for you. So this is episode 8 of our Fisher Search Group podcast, How to Stay True to Your Values in Leadership and Life. We had some great conversation around leadership, diversity, inclusion, and in life and values. So let's rapid fire final thoughts around, and this is always my favorite one because we do a lot of interviewing, but do you have an interview process or an element in your interview process that you feel gets results?
Honest, I think people say that they do. I don't know. I think people wing it. I'll be really honest. And I do the same. But there is something I
Okay.
usually always ask. One question I always ask because of the culture I try to build on my teams is like, tell me a time that you disagree with your boss and what that looked like. Or
Mm-hmm.
tell me a time the organization did something you didn't agree with. What did you do? Because what I'm looking for is comfortable, courageous. I'm willing to
Mm-hmm.
challenge people. And you watch their body language when they answer that question. If it makes them super uncomfortable to even think about challenging, I always ask a follow-up question, right? Like, if you were in a safe place where you felt supported, would you want, do you wish you could do more? So it just depends on the person, but I really want to know people's comfortability with challenging the status quo because I need to be challenged. I'm a big voice. I say it to everyone I interview, especially my direct reports. I go, I take up space. Can you make
Yep.
me smaller with your shine? Like, can you comfortably handle someone who takes up space? And I know it, but I like to challenge that in the interview process because I really do want
Good.
people to feel comfortable on the team. And if everyone's challenging and one person isn't, it makes them feel bad. So we have to make sure we find good culture fits.
Great. Favorite leadership mantra?
Ooh, there's a question I ask a lot, which is the what would need to be true. So a lot of times, if I like big, the hairy, audacious goal or the bold
Yeah.
things, which you talked about at the beginning, and I think sometimes that
BHAG.
makes people uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always say, well, what would need to be true? So I may say, hey, let's try this, and they're like, oh, we could never do that. I'm like, okay, well, what would need to be true for that? And then they say some ridiculous, like, I would need $100 million, and I'm like, what would need to be true for you to get $100 million? If you do
Right.
that enough times, you end up getting to a really reasonable next step. And then you go, well, why don't we start there? So that is everyone who's ever worked for me is probably, their skin is probably crawling if they're listening to this, but
Right.
it's
Right.
really good.
What would need to be true? I love it.
Yes.
All right. Book or resources that you recommend?
Ooh, well, my favorite workbook is Radical Candor. It's like me in a book. It's caring deeply and challenging directly.
Yep.
But fictional book, because I've been reading a lot lately, is The Secret Life of Addie LaRue. That was really good.
I have not heard of that. I'm gonna have to.
It was really good.
Oh, nice. Okay. Let's bring it back to wine. Do you have a go-to wine right now?
Ooh, I have been drinking a lot of Vermentino, which is like a Italian grape. It's like I've never met anyone who doesn't like that grape. So I've been drinking a lot of that since it's summer now too. It just turned summer. It's like a very fun summer grape, and it's usually reasonably priced and quite tasty.
Okay. And then final advice for anyone building a meaningful career. Final advice for building a meaningful career. I mean, this is a very open-ended, large question.
Yeah, I know. I was just trying to
If
think.
you're in a reflective space, let's hear it.
Well, I feel like one of the things we organically just in this conversation was that values piece. I think we were just talking about like not a lot of people don't sit down and say, who am I? What's important to me? What are my values? And so I don't know. I think I would say that would be where I would start. It'll help you decide what you want to do, what industry you want to work in, who you want to work for, who you don't want to work for. I think that would be my advice. I think out of this conversation, I'm taking that away to sit down and do that again, because I think it's important to remember who you are, what are your values, and then in times of trouble, you can always come back to it. And I think that would be my advice. Figure out what your values and your mission are, and don't be afraid to change them over time.
Yeah. So what I'm also reflecting on is boundaries, is creating like what you passionate about and what you're not willing to compromise on. And of course, there'll be some things that you'll have to shift a little bit, but if you have your boundaries around what you are passionate and care about, you protect yourself and you can stay true to who you really want to be.
Yeah. And that's not always the case. I will say, for people who are like, I can't leave my job and it's XYZ, there's still ways to be true to you, even in hard situations. It's just the way you shape the world around you. So even though sometimes you can't just leave the job if you're in a negative situation, the way you react to the situation, you can change, even if you can't, leave or quit. And I know sometimes people feel frustrated by that, but you can still change the way you handle it, even if it means you still have to tough out.
Right. And if you feel stuck or trapped, just start by having the conversation with someone that you trust, whether it's a peer or, best friend or outside of work. Sometimes logistically, people can't leave their job.
Yes.
Just for financial reasons or commute or, family, whatever it is. But there are ways to get help. There are ways to get resources, and just start by having the conversation, journal, come back to those values. I really love that. Anything else? Because we're just about to wrap up here.
No, this was great. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'm taking something away, even just like, I think it's just so nice to talk about and kind of reflect on my career. I've really enjoyed the time.
Good. Well, thank you very much. We're joined by my friend and colleague, Jordan Grace. Thank you so much. Be sure to comment below, like, subscribe, share, all those things. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.